You've earned every penny. All right, I promised myself that I will not take all day or 2 days or 3 days or whatever. We went over a lot of the evidence yesterday, but there's more. And as I said, I only have one opportunity to speak with you. I don't know what the prosecution is going to respond with. Hopefully it will just be rebutting what we have said, nothing new that you haven't heard, because I think it's fair to say that during the opening argument by Ms. Silverman, you heard everything that went on in this case. And I'm sure, as I said, it shouldn't have taken 3 days and 9 weeks and 8 years to convict Ms. Sementilli if she was guilty. It took all that time to try and convict her because I submit to you she is not guilty. And I told you some of the reasons. And I was thinking last night, and we'll go over, the evidence like the phone records and all those things a little more again, because it occupied such a significant part of this case. But I was thinking about that letter again that was written by Mr. Baker after he had entered his plea of guilty. These are some of the thoughts I had, and I'll express a few more. No reason to write this letter. If she was a co-conspirator, why lie to her, having a letter delivered by her attorneys which he did not know would get turned over. He's a liar, he's a murderer, but despite all his inconsistencies, he has remained consistent about one thing, that Monica is innocent, and he had nothing to gain by testifying. No reason to lie about this. We can take this down. This is what he said on the witness stand when asked about the letter. It was just a message to her to let her know how I felt. I didn't want to think. I just did it just to be as ruthless. I didn't want her to think I did it just to be as ruthless and heinous as they are trying to make it out to be. Like it was cold. And it was, but I wanted her to know. Now, what did he want her to know? He wanted her to know what was in the letter. As much as I want to apologize to say I'm sorry for what happened to him and anyone else, since it will never be enough for me to emphasize, especially to you, this all happened in 2007, because remember this is written in 2023, 24. It was actually, the intent was to actually deliver a gift for your birthday. Unknowing it was an unforeseen disaster, a disaster to which I felt horrible. It got worse by my own personal hell. It was supposed to have been a good thing, but it went horribly wrong. So why did he write it? He wasn't testifying. He didn't have a deal. He wasn't testifying against anybody because he had an agreement to say they were guilty, even if they weren't. Never did that with Monica. Why did he write that letter? After he pled guilty, mind you. So he pled guilty not to an accident, not to a disaster. He knows what he pled guilty to. He pled guilty to first-degree murder. Premeditated, malice aforethought, knowing he was going to kill somebody, intending to kill somebody, and killing somebody, and following through. That's what he pled to. But remember, when he entered his plea, and you have the transcript, nobody went into what happened with him. Now the prosecution will tell you, and the prosecution is right, if you're willing to go into court and say, I am guilty of all the charges, there's not much anyone can do but say, you are convicted. And without a deal, without a promise ahead of time like Mr. Austin got, there's not much the court can do except to do what it did and sentence you to the maximum, the only sentence for what he pled to, life without parole. And I submit to you, as I submitted yesterday, had he been asked, simply asked, wouldn't have changed the plea, wouldn't have changed the charge, wouldn't have changed the sentence. Tell us, Mr. Baker, what did you do? Was Monica Sementilli your co-conspirator? Did she join you? It's not going to change your plea. You're pleading guilty. Just tell us. That's what you were charged with. Now, you pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Turned out the conspirator was Christopher Austin. But just tell us, did she join you? And then he would have been on the spot. But not really. Because his story that he tried to cover up in that letter, what he testified to on the witness stand, again, with no deal, he didn't have to do anything. We couldn't call him to the stand and force him to testify. What are we going to do to him? Hold him in contempt? He's doing life without parole. We'll give you 3 days of contempt. He didn't have to do any of that. And it became clear to us, thankfully, well, not thankfully, they should have asked him. They should have asked him.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. The people have no right to do that.
Excuse me. You can argue. It's overruled.
No right to do that. Okay. Her name was right in the charge. But if you read the transcript, Mr. Baker, you are charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder with the use of a weapon. For some reason, the name conspiracy with Monica Sementilli was left out. It was in the charge, and they will argue that to you. He pled guilty to the charge. Of course he was pleading guilty to conspiring with Monica. That's not what they read to him in court. And I submit to you it was not an accident. Because I submit to you, it was made clear to them that had he been asked, are you pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit murder with Monica Sementilli, he would have said no. She wasn't the one involved. It was somebody else. Now, he probably would not have named Mr. Austin dead, who was protecting him, man of his word. If that means anything to a brutal killer. But, submit to you, he would not have said, I plead guilty to that. They let him plead guilty to the charge without mentioning her name or asking him who he conspired with. And remember also something interesting. We're not allowed to, she says. The charge included all these overt acts. Remember? You're going to see all these, they call them overt acts, which are necessary. Just one has to be found true, and as the prosecution said, you don't even have to agree on which one, and there's like 50 of them. They called up, they planned it, they went to the scene, they hid the knife, whatever's in there. Everything in there is what the testimony was that occurred. And if this was Mr. Baker's trial, you'd have to find one of them true, and if you find Ms. Sementilli guilty, which I implore you she is not, based on the facts of this case, then you're going to have to find one of the overt acts was true. But a lot of them are true. She called up. We went to. I drove to the residence. I had a knife. Whatever. That's not what this case is about. If Baker is guilty, he's guilty of all those overt acts. If she is proven guilty, she is guilty of all those overt acts. The ones that are true have nothing to do with who killed Fabio. They have to do with the fact that he was killed. But the point is, to be found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, as I recall, and you'll be instructed, you have to meet all the elements, and you have to have committed at least one of the overt acts. So, and one of the overt acts, a lot of them involved Monica Sementilli. Called her up, you planned it, you went there, she told you he was going to be alone, da-da-da-da-da-da, she made sure he was there. There must be 20 of them. Why didn't the prosecution, when they took his plea, include one of the overt acts? That they could have done. That's the charge. They didn't name one of them. They just had him plead no contest, equivalent of guilty, to committing a conspiracy with at least one overt act. And had they said one of the 20 or whatever's there, you look there, where her name is mentioned, I submit to you he would have said no. Because it became clear after he was sentenced to life without parole, and nobody could do anything to him or for him, and no one could say he made a deal, and no one could say he got a bargain, and no one could say he got 15, and no one could say anything, because he got the maximum, that it became clear that Monica was not with him. And he was willing to testify to that under oath. Now, oath to him, you can say, means nothing. It may not. He distinguished between it when he lied to us when we met with him the 12 or 13 times. Yeah, I lied about this, like that, but I wasn't under oath, and he wasn't. We can't put him under oath. So he told you he told the truth on the witness stand, and the prosecution will probably point out many times when they say he lied even under oath. But it was our duty, representing a client who had pleaded not guilty, which means it is a total denial of all of the charges, and we know the person, and we only knew one at the time, Robert Baker, had committed the murder. It was clear. It was clear from the February 14th, 2017, it was clear. And I told you why I thought these gentlemen and those who preceded them should have arrested him right on the spot, get him off the street, find out what happened if you could from him. Find the second murderer. Don't have the family, keep the family in danger. That was the danger, leaving him on the street and leaving Austin on the street. But he made it clear when we met with him, the only thing he made clear that clearly he was consistent with throughout our interviews of him was that she was not involved at all. So what were we supposed to do? Not put him on the stand? When we believe that was the truth, and that's what the evidence showed? The one person who was there, well, two people could have established that she wasn't there. Mr. Baker did, in his stumbling, mumbling way, but he was consistent about that. He lied about Jaybird, and he certainly lied there in that letter. But he didn't lie about whether she was involved or not. And the other one who could have exonerated her as well, and should have, if he had any real conscience or guts, was Christopher Austin. Because he had said, remember, all along in the Perkins and all the rest, He didn't even know her. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. And I'll get to what they told him after that about what he had to say. He even said to Miss Stagel, "You tell me what you need, and I'll give it to you. But I want something in return," and she couldn't give it then. Nor, am I saying, would she? He wanted to go home and see his wife and daughters. He had to wait to get his deal until he came down here with Mr. Aval, and you know all about that. So Mr. Austin, after all, there's only two people who know what happened that day. One of them pled guilty and is doing life and said she had nothing to do with it. One got the deal of the century, was told what to say, and said it. Yeah, I remember there was some calls. One, I don't know, was there one? Was there two? Was there three? Was there... Let me read, and I'll get back to this letter. This is a verbatim transcript from the tape of the proffer that was played to you. Proffer is no more, as you know, than an interview of the person who wants the deal, and now the prosecution is going to find out whether he's earned the deal. And remember how you earn a deal. You tell the truth. Okay, that's good. And the information has to be valuable. Why wasn't the proffer just tell the truth? Why does it have to be valuable? Because he's worthless if he just gets up there and says, "I killed Fabio Sementilli and I did it with Robert Baker and she had nothing to do with it." Not only is that not valuable, because they already had Baker, right, doing life. They already had him confessing in Vancouver to the conspiracy to commit murder. They could have sentenced him to 30 to life. That would have been justice and the end of this case. But it wouldn't have gotten them hurt. And that's what they wanted. And I don't question their sincerity. I question their judgment. And the two before them. And the two before them. And the two before them. What was it, 10, 15? Not one of them said, this is not a bad idea to not go up there and see Austin. We shouldn't leave Baker on the street, There's something wrong here. It's not working. We're trailing her around 24 hours a day with trackers and tailors, and we're learning nothing more than she had an affair. Why aren't we learning that they conspired? Why aren't we hearing her? One of them was sitting in the car almost next to her when she said, "How can I be so stupid? How can I be so stupid to be with this guy who's telling me what to do and who to touch and who to kiss and who to have three-ways with, whatever." It's a little late to leave him, isn't it? Tell everyone I had an affair with this guy. This is the guy. And in some sick, perverted way, yes, she loved him. So stupid and love are not mutually exclusive. And you can read a lot of books and see a lot of movies and know a lot of people who do stupid things for love. That is hardly unusual in the world of men and women and the human species, shall we say. People love for all the right reasons and it's beautiful, and they love for all the wrong reasons and it's horrible. And when they kill so they can be with the one they love, like Mr. Baker did, it is worse than anything else you can do unless you're killing two people. And that's about what they're trying to do. Kill Baker's life and Austin's with the deal and get her. Again, I don't question their sincerity, although I question a lot of what we're going to go into because I think they misrepresented the evidence to you, but I sure as hell question their judgment. So Mr. Baker testifies, and he gives us this letter. Now, it didn't hit us immediately. We're a little dense, me and Mr. Dawson. But it sure got the attention of our co-counsel, who are a little younger, a little smarter. Why would you write a letter trying to minimize what you did, trying to make it look like an accident, or at the very least self-defense, making it look like I didn't go to kill him at all? I went to drop off a note and he happened to be home, and you can read the letter. It's full of lies. And he certainly doesn't name Mr. Austin, we know that. But why in God's name would you write a letter apologizing for how you killed him and saying I didn't mean it and it wasn't intentional and it was an accident to somebody who did it with you, who knew all about it, who conspired with you to kill him? The letter says it happened because I was delivering you a card and things went astray. Things went astray, and it was my fault, but it wasn't intentional. Well, the conspiracy was intentional. We know that. He was stabbed in the heart and the leg and the neck. There was nothing accidental about it. But he wants her to believe it was accidental, and he sends it to the very person that they say wanted it done to begin with. It doesn't make any sense. And when did he write it? He wrote it, 4 years later? 5 years later? 2017 to 2023? 6 years later? Couldn't write it before because he was fighting the case with her and had convinced her, we got to fight this together or we are dead together. But once he realized he could not win the case, maybe because he thought he didn't have a good attorney, the attorney never went to him, whatever, but the real reason, let's be honest, he pled guilty, he accepted the charge, is because he did it. And his DNA was all over the house, the sink, the bedroom, the Porsche, the brakes, the garage, the cell box. So he pleads and he writes this letter. And you have to ask yourself, why? Can't fool her if she's in on it. But if she was not part of the conspiracy, that letter makes a little sense, a lot of sense, especially if he loves her in his sick, perverted way. And he kept professing that he did, and I only assume that if he was willing to brutally kill somebody in cold blood, that could have been the reason. And we know from life's experiences and, yes, the TV shows and all the rest, that killing someone so you can be with your lover is not exactly unusual, unfortunately, or rare. And it happened here. Okay. There's one more thing that also kind of goes under the topic of little things mean a lot, although it's not so little. With all the things that were being deleted to cover up the affair, and we deleted this and they deleted that, and the day of the murder they deleted this. Turned out they deleted everything, and she wanted everything deleted because she didn't want the affair to come out, whether it was the photographs or the statements or anything, and with good reason. You saw what she was made to look like on the witness stand with that. But this is a text that is recovered by the prosecution experts. They were required under law, and they did, to turn over to us everything that they did in their investigation that was relevant to the issue of guilt or innocence. And one of the things we found that had not been deleted was a text from Mr. Baker to Ms. Sementilli under the timestamp 1/24/2/17/2:05/12. So I assume it's 2 in the morning, right? 2 in the afternoon. I had a 50-50 chance and screwed it up. 2 in the afternoon, incoming call. And what does it say? I'm so sorry. Now, sorry for what? For what? If he conspired to kill her with her, he ain't going to be so sorry. It should say something like, we did it. I got it. I got it done. We're together. Whatever. Something sick like that, but something that at least would be consistent with someone who's just committed a murder for his lover to get rid of the one person standing in the way of he and his lover going to Italy or Las Vegas or God knows one of the stories he told, but never in front of her. Why say I'm sorry unless she is not and was not involved in the conspiracy to commit murder? And as far as he knows, no matter what he may think about the state of their marriage, or unhappy she may be, or why she's with him, which is a pretty good indication that she wants him more than Fabio, or at least she's sharing him, which is what, as we said, she could have continued to do for years and years if she wanted to, or she could have left him and gone back to Fabio. There was no reason to kill him. I'm so sorry. That is something you say to someone who's lost a loved one and you want them to know that you're sorry about it. And after all, Mr. Baker is her lover. They have had an affair from January 2016, and now we're in January 2017. But he doesn't want her to know that he killed Fabio. He wants her to believe, as she did, and they all did, what the police told them. This was a no-knock burglary, robbery that went astray. And they lied to her and her family and her friends and everyone for all those months. And Baker says, I'm so sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, if you combine I'm so sorry the next day with I apologize for how I did it, which is after he obviously has admitted he was the killer, then I submit to you on that evidence alone, you could and you should find that there is a reasonable doubt of the guilt of Miss Sementilli. You really think he's smart enough to think, I'm going to send a text the next day that says I'm so sorry, so eventually, if we're caught, I can have Mr. Levine put it up on the board, and that's going to be a good point. Not for me. But they're going to falsely accuse Monica, and that's going to help her. He knows that the day after the murder. The only thing he knows the day after the murder is that he and Austin killed Fabio Sementilli. They stabbed him to death. And the only other thing he knows the day after the murder is that she was not involved. And he did exactly what any of us might have done in a similar situation, though I doubt we would be in an affair with someone like Robert Baker. But we would say, I'm so sorry. Isn't that what the people who came to the wake said? The first of numerous misstatements, and that's being generous, by the prosecution, that why would Monica invite her gym rats to this wake, or whatever you want to call it, celebration of his life, mourning of his life, of his death, a day or two after. Why would she do that if she wasn't involved with Baker? Well, she didn't do that, remember? It was a testimony of one of the gym rats, people from LA Fitness, who told you on the stand, and wasn't a favorable witness for Monica, because they were saying, oh yeah, you know, they wanted to be together, and that's what Baker was saying. Of course, they said all that after the arrest, never before. Why don't we go and pay our condolences to Monica and her family? That's the evidence. She didn't invite him. Yeah, that would have been a little suspicious. You know, what's suspicious is that he came. Or she didn't look at him and pull him aside and say, get the hell out of here. What are you doing here? We just killed him and you're showing up? No, she sat with him and she talked with him. And she was criticized for having him come out to the patio where Fabio was killed, where everybody came out. Why wouldn't she take him out there? She didn't conspire to kill her husband. All she knows is that he's still her lover. And at that point, she doesn't have much else. She's not going to run around and telling her family and Fabio's family, oh, I had nothing to do with the murder, but by the way, me and Mr. Baker have been having an affair for a year. So they kept it secret, as you would expect. And the other thing I think I said to you yesterday, and I'll just repeat it for the last time, if they were so smart, well, first of all, Ms. Silverman characterizes Baker as dumb. And she may be right. But again, he was smart enough, she says, to write, I'm so sorry, even though Monica knows he did it, and he was smart enough to send a letter apologizing for how he killed Fabio and making it look like an accident to the very person who wanted him to kill Fabio. You got to be pretty smart to do that, or you got to be telling the truth, which he was. If we could put the next slide up there. I spoke to you a lot about Christopher Austin yesterday, and I submitted to you he lied through his teeth to get the deal. And the judge will tell you these are some of the factors you can consider when you try to determine if a witness is telling the truth or not. The ability of the witness to remember, character and quality, the demeanor, existence or non-existence. So let's put that back. The existence or non-existence of a bias, interest, or other motive. The attitude of the witness towards the action or giving the testimony. Now, you know, that doesn't just apply. I was just thinking to Mr. Austin. That applies to all the witnesses who took the stand in this case. And we'll get to them in a second. Because, as I told you, by the time they were interviewed, By the time the police got around to interviewing them, they had already been told Monica killed Fabio with Baker. And if you don't think that was some kind of bias against her, then you didn't listen to this evidence here. As I told you before, had they interviewed these people before the arrest, and it was 4 months, more important, had any of those people come forward, Luigi, Marco, Meyer, Everbacher, Truesdale, anybody from Wella, had any of those people come forward, there they are, several of them, had any of them come forward before the arrest of Monica and Baker, 4 months, and said, you know what, I think you ought to take a look at Monica. She's acting a little strange. She's harassing us about the insurance. She's bugging us about going on trips. She wants this, she wants that. Why don't you consider that maybe she knows more than she's saying? None of them said that until the arrest. Then they were told, we've got it, we've solved it. Not really. 8 more years to solve it. We solved it. She did it. She killed her husband with Baker. And now we'd like to talk to you about what you know about the case. And suddenly you heard the animosity and the hatred that came out, some subtly from Wella, because they're not family, but they considered Fabio family, and some from Fabio's family, who now understood, because the police never get it wrong, right? Never get it wrong. That when they didn't say, we've made an arrest, there's going to be a prosecution and the truth will come out, hopefully. They said, we've made an arrest and we found her. We found what happened. She killed him with Baker. There's no question in our mind. On what? On all those phone calls that they were making months before? On the fact that she took 11 minutes to get from Target to her house? I'll explain to you what that means. So they didn't just say they arrested her, they said she was guilty. And that is not their job. It is their job. They were as obsessed with getting her as the police were, but at least they prosecuted her in an open court where jurors get a chance to hear all the evidence, all of it. They didn't convict her in the court of public opinion, which is what happens when the police announce, we've caught the murderers. Every one of those witnesses who testified had some bias against Monica and started to look at her a different way. And you know that because a loving family, and it was, who had come down for those 4 months to help in any way they could, all of them, Morella, Marco, Luigi, all of them, helping with the funeral, planning it, all of them, doing everything they could for a grieving wife of their beloved sister, brother, or father, or uncle, or whatever. Suddenly, Jessica and Bella were non compos mentis. They were out of the picture. They were no longer part of this close-knit family. They weren't being invited again to family get-togethers in Canada, and they weren't flying down to take care of the family anymore. And you know what? I don't think it's right, but I don't blame them. They were told that their mother killed Fabio. All of that as a result of the arrest. None of it was their opinion. Oh, they were buying cars, and she spent too much. My God, they bought a car, a Mustang, on credit? Had to sell the truck because they wouldn't keep the lease going, it wasn't in their name? Sold the Porsche, maybe, because did you really want, even though it was his favorite car, driving around in the Porsche where he was murdered, or at least the blood of his murderers was all over the car? Are these indications of guilt? Why do you think they put on the Ford salesman and the Fiat salesman and the car salesman and the lease salesman, and they must have put on 10 witnesses? But one of the girls, Bella, I think, had an accident and they had to get a new car. Insurance paid for it. Even that was brought out. Fabio made sure they each had their own car. He had two he drove, the Porsche and the truck. So what? He worked hard. He deserved it. He gave to his kids. That's what a father does. Trust me. Everything was turned upside down. As Luigi said, the clouds became clear. Back to the witness. And I again ask you to look at this involving Mr. Austin. An admission by the witness of untruthfulness. Well, we know he lied throughout his original statements. Said he knew her, didn't know her, said nothing about Monica having anything to do with it, said nothing about the attempted murder the night before, lied about everything. The witness's prior conviction of a felony, well, they can use that against Mr. Baker as if they needed it to show that he was untrustworthy. And again, we're not saying the letter and the I'm sorry is evidence of his honesty. We're saying there's no way you write that letter if you're writing it to the person who conspired with you to kill the very person you're saying I'm sorry about and apologizing for the manner in which you did it. But the last one, of course, really applies, whether the witness is testifying under a grant of immunity or leniency. Now, why is that up there? Why will the judge read you that? Because that is the law. And as I've tried to point out throughout this case, and especially your oath to presume innocence and not convict unless it is proven beyond a reasonable doubt, that's one of the instructions also. So you can consider the fact that Mr. Austin got leniency. And boy, did he get leniency. Now, the other thing I told you that even the manner in which he was questioned by the prosecution was hardly designed to get the truth. Now, they'll say it was, and the judge is going to decide if he told the truth. The judge wasn't there for the proffer. The judge wasn't there deciding if he gets the deal. Now, if you wanted the judge to decide if he was telling the truth, get the judge there to listen. Then I bet you wouldn't have heard stuff like this from Ms. Silverman. Approximately how many three-way calls between you, Baker, and Al do you think you had? Answer, I don't want to lie to you, Beth. Oh, that's a good start. Question. Now, the question should have been, so tell me how many, right? That's the open-ended question. This is the leading question. More than one? Answer, more than one. Question. Should have been, how many more? No. More than two? Answer. About three, maybe. Okay. Could it be more than three? She's thinking it's going to take more than 3 calls to plot a murder that you're supposed to be plotting from July at a hotel you were supposed to be at that you were never at. And plotting it in January and December. 3? With Birdsong and Austin? Not enough. Could it have been more than 3? Not how many. Possibly. Could it have been as many as half a dozen or more? Why is she telling him how many? Is that what Birdsong said? Certainly wasn't what the record showed. Could have been as many as half a dozen or more? Possibly, yes. All right? You're going to see. He loves the word possibly. I believe, I understood, I assumed. From someone who's being given half his life back, the answer should be a little more clear than that. He should have a pretty good idea, because you don't kill somebody every day, how many times you conspired with the other parties to do it. More than half a dozen or more? Possibly, yes. And did any of the 3-way calls between you, Baker, and Al relate specifically to this job of getting rid of Monica's husband? Couldn't even call him Fabio because he didn't even know what the hell Fabio's name was. Now, there's the question, right? Not how many calls you had, but did any of them have to do specifically to the job of getting rid of Monica's husband, killing him? That's what they want to know. Now, the question should have been, what were the calls about? Let him tell you. Don't tell him what they were about and get him to say yes. But you know what? No audible response. You play that tape. It's a pretty simple question. Did any of the calls have to do specifically to this job of getting rid of Monica's husband? He couldn't even say yes. And you know what? That wasn't good. Not for Mr. Aval, who worked real hard to get him this deal, and not for Mr. Austin, who has to give truthful and valuable testimony. So what happens? We can leave the room too if you want. May I just have one moment? Mr. Aval says. Miss Silverman? Yep. And we're going to move you guys to another room, so that's nothing's being recorded in your conversation. That's important. This is attorney-client. God forbid they should agree to have it recorded. They could do. What's he going to tell them? To lie? We're going to have you guys move to the other room. Nothing's recorded. It's confidential. It's 11:54. Mr. Austin and his lawyer are leaving the room. Well, they're only gone 3 minutes. Doesn't take long to say, you idiot. You want your deal? You better tell him it had to do with Monica. Get the hell out there. And that's me writing the script. They did it with something like that. They get back on the record. It's 11:57, Ms. Silverman says. We're back on the record. And the question that is asked is not, well, what is your answer now that you've spoken to your lawyer and he's told you what to say? The question is, I just had a brief conversation with your lawyer, says Ms. Silverman. I know that the position that you're in here really isn't good, right? Understatement. No audible response. Question. Like, we understand how difficult it is to be in your position. However, you know why you're here. Yes, ma'am. Doesn't take much to figure out why he's there and how difficult it is, really. Is it difficult to tell the truth and get a reduced sentence? It's difficult to tell the truth and make it valuable. Question. You have said on multiple occasions from what I've read that you're ashamed of what happened and your participation in it, and I understand that. like I said, that you're in a very difficult position, but how forthcoming you are is appreciated. We appreciate that, and will be something that obviously is going to be taken into account with respect to any potential disposition that we offer you through your counsel. It's a very legalistic way of saying it's time for you to put up or shut up. And now Mr. Aval comes through and says, and I have advised him that it is in his best interest to be as forthcoming and as truthful as possible and to answer all of your questions to the best of his ability. Ms. Silverman, thank you, Mr. Aval. Well, why did he have to be told by his attorney, you know, it's in the best interest for you to tell the truth? I thought that's what he swore to tell the truth to begin with. I thought that's why he was coming down there. Wasn't he? To tell the truth? Hadn't they already gone through that? Took an oath? That's gibberish. That means I think it's in your best interest to tell them what they want. What you told them and I told them you could do, or we wouldn't have had this damn proffer. What, we're going to have a proffer and the guy's going to say, I don't remember how many calls I had and I don't remember if it had to do with Monica's murder? It's the only thing he didn't say in Vancouver till he got his lawyer. Ms. Silverman, thank you, Mr. Aval, for reminding your client to be forthcoming and truthful, which they wouldn't have needed the private conference if he had been doing that. Now, Ms. Silverman goes on, and I think we all believe, you're doing exactly that. Really? At that point where she says, well, the three-way calls have to do with the killing of Monica's husband, and he says, doesn't answer, and he has to have a meeting, and what does the prosecution say? We all believe you're doing exactly that. If it gets to a point, however, where I don't, I have a lot of work, and I bet she does. We all do, especially when you're trying cases like this. I have a lot of work. We all do. And you know, I've walked out of proffer sessions on many occasions. But I'm so appreciative of the way that you are handling yourself and trying to remember. So, and he says, I'm trying to remember, so forgive me. And she says, oh, there's no need to forgive, there's no apology needed. I just wanted to put that on the record. I also want to put on the record, by the way, that since we're getting into this, if any other individuals besides Monica and Baker are offered dispositions, assuming one is offered, it will be continued upon you. In other words, if we offer you a disposition, you not only got to testify against Monica, you got to testify against anyone else involved in the conspiracy. You understand? Yes, ma'am. There may be follow-ups to the interview. You know, we may come back to you on another day. If we get to the point where you're exhausted, we'll pick another day. I hope not, because I'd like to get as much done. And it's for you to have to be worrying about it overnight. And we don't want to have to transport you back and forth. And he says, I have to suffer, so it's okay. I have to suffer. Really? Suffer? This is suffering? No, suffering is what he did to Fabio Sementilli. So then they go on. None of that was necessary to a simple question of how many three-way calls did you have? One, maybe two, maybe three, yeah, I mean 4, yeah, possibly, yeah. And the calls had to do, right, with killing Monica's husband, right? And then you heard it. Now, don't get me wrong, from that point on, there are 20 more lies he tells about the knife, about the gold coins, about everything. Because it is all a lie to get his deal. And if you have any doubt about that, please have the reporter play back to you, and you will have the transcript if you want it to help guide you in listening to it, to that proffer session. Because based on that proffer session, Mr. Austin was given his deal of the century. And all he had to do was get up on that stand and say, Monica knew. All he had to do. The rest was just frosting on the cake. How he got the coins, when he got the coins, we'll get to that. I think it's necessary. When he got there, when he left, what happened there, who got the wires, who went through the house, who was in the trunk, who wasn't in the trunk, who did the stabbing. See, that he should have no problem with. Because that's the truth. He killed, with Robert Baker, Fabio Sementilli. That's what it says. No man has a good enough memory to be a successful liar. Well, he didn't have a good enough memory to be a liar about her, but he damn well had a good enough memory to remember that he killed him. And I'm going to cite to you, before we end here, exactly what he says about that. Because I am still, not that my opinion means a damn thing, it's the evidence, still not pleased with him getting this deal, because I think the evidence showed he lied. It's the only reason she's being prosecuted, his lie. Throw it out. Yeah, throw it out and see what other evidence is. And I'm also not comfortable with how he was treated on the witness stand compared to Mr. Baker. Whatever you can say about Mr. Baker, he had a reason. I'm not going to call it a motive, a reason. He wanted her for himself. Not a good reason is never a good reason for murder unless you're acting in self-defense or fighting a war. But at least he had a reason. He knew after that Christmas this wasn't going to go on forever. And he didn't like the way it was going on. She could have just carried it out all the way. She was never going to marry him or bring him home, or even after the murder, when she had no idea he was involved, that she'd go home and for Passover and say, "Hey, look what I brought to the Seder." Well, you're not Jewish, so it's the Last Supper, I think, in Christianity. Whatever it was, she wasn't liable to do that. She wasn't. I don't think she's bringing Baker home and saying, "Wow, look who Fabio was tragically killed. Look who I'm with. My new mate." So she continued to keep it secret, and I submit to you, I hope, we'll never know, that eventually she would have realized he was nothing more than a whoremonger, a slut maker, a woman controller, a child molester, and eventually a killer. But the point is, he had a reason and a goal to get rid of Fabio so he had a chance to keep Monica. What was Mr. Austin's reason? What was his goal? The nerve of him to say, because he asked me to. He asked me to. Then to lie through his teeth. Remember what he said originally? It's all in the record. It's all in the cross-examination of Mr. Austin that I went through with him. It wasn't that difficult. There was a transcript of the Perkins interview and the October 2nd interview when Ms. Stagel went up there. It was all there. Tell me what you need, I'll give it to you. Tell me what you want, I'll give it to you. It's all there. What was his reason for doing it? Money? You'll see that he is all over the place with money. There is no reason other than Mr. Baker said, I need your help. This guy with a wife and kid who works in a parole office is going to go down and twice try to kill someone and the second time do it. For what? Because he asked me to, and he told me he would take care of me. I trusted him. You know what he meant by take care of me? He meant don't snitch me out. And you know what? Baker kept his word on that. It wasn't Baker that got Mr. Austin arrested and convicted for a lesser crime. It was Mr. Austin himself. Then Baker said, yeah, it was him. So he's being told down there, you better get her. She's the only one left. You listen to it all. It's not even close. You got to change your story. She's the bitch who's getting out of it. For some reason, he thinks she's getting out of it. He says nothing about, oh, I know what I was thinking of. And when he's talking to the Perkins person, and I believe even the detectives who went up there, the two gentlemen behind me and Miss Daigle, yeah, they even question him about it. You know what? Yeah, okay, there's some of the things Mr. Babbage is putting up there. You want to put up some of the other ones? If they can get that man and they want the big fish, if they can get that motherfucker, they ain't giving a fuck about you. I mean, Jesus, go on. Of course, you're going to have to switch your story up a little bit. This is a police officer telling a potential witness, you're going to have to switch your story up. Because what you told me when you believed I was just another suspect like you in trouble, what you told me was you didn't know shit about her. You didn't even know her name. All right, go on. You know the situation. You got to save yourself, man. That bitch is trying to get out. I guess he means that bitch is trying to get out of the prosecution. Of course, this is a police officer saying this, not a jury. At this time, I'm just being honest. Fuck that. Fuck her life. It's her life or your life. Austin, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm looking for some type of deal to go home to my girls. That's to Miss Daigle. She says, right, I understand. Okay. And then what Austin says after that to Miss Daigle? What do you need from me just so I can go home to go see my girls? Now, to her credit, Miss Daigle doesn't say, yeah, we want you to come up here and lie, say something that's not true. But he refuses to go on with any more conversations about what he knows or doesn't know about the only thing they care about, because they already have Baker pled and sentenced. They already have Austin admitting that he killed him. That's in the rest of the proffer. And the only thing they don't have is her. I keep saying that, I know, but that is why you are here. That is why she is here. So Austin gives them what they want so he can go home and see his girls. Is anything more obvious than that? Now at that point, when he said, tell me what you need, I'll tell you whatever you want, and they know the Perkins tape because Perkins is one of them, I submit to you, if I'm the DA's office, I say, we can't trust this guy. Unless we can corroborate what he's saying, in other words, if there's other evidence that corroborates what he's saying, like an overheard phone call, or records of a three-way call, or maybe someone else who heard him talking to Monica, or maybe proof that Monica met him at the Aria Hotel, where they tried for 2 months and 12 witnesses, and God knows how many undercover officers to prove they met at the Aria, and they couldn't even prove that. And eventually he says, no, I met her at the LA Fitness. If I'm the prosecutor, I say, I don't think we can trust this guy to tell the truth. Especially after the proffer, which means his attorney obviously goes in and tells the DA, this is what I think my client can do for you. It's valuable. And then they decide even to give him the proffer. I might have concluded, if I was the DA, I don't think we can trust this guy as far as we can throw him. Well, I was wrong. The next thing we know, they're going on with the proffer. And I read you about, can we have a minute? You come back and then he knows what to say. This is what he says for the mainly about Monica's involvement. I believe, I assume, there's also should be up there, I understand, it's my assumption, not once did Austin firsthand overhear any conversation between Monica and Baker, nor did he ever see one text message between the two of them. Austin never had any text or phone calls with Monica. After extensive analysis by data experts, there's no evidence of any link between the devices of Monica and Austin, three ways or others. Now, why is that important? First of all, it means that all Austin is going to be able to tell you is simply, Baker told me that Monica wanted him dead. Baker asked me if I would kill him. Baker told me that Monica said she's sending him to the foe. Baker told me that Monica said he's going to be home. Baker told me blah, blah, blah. So all he has to add to what Baker was honestly involved with is, Monica told me that. Monica told me that. That's all he adds. And he isn't even up there if he doesn't get his deal. Were you aware that Monica and Al were tight, or that they were in communication? I assumed that they were, because of how much whatever. You mean the 22nd? That's the night before, as I recall. I believed he texted her and said it didn't work. And we went back to his pad and just crashed. Leave that up a second. This is what Austin testified to. If you remember, he backed away from killing Fabio, which should have led to him flying home and Fabio would be alive and we wouldn't be here. But of course, they go back to the house and he's apologizing for not doing it. And according to him, Baker has to tell Monica it didn't work. So he says, I believe he texted her and said it didn't work. That is all he says. Not that I heard him, not that I was there, not that I watched the text, not that I listened to the phone call. I believe he texted her. Well, do you know, did you see or hear, did he tell you how he communicated with Monica after that? That would have been important. Yeah, he texted. He started texting, and I assumed it was Monica. Why did you assume that? Because he didn't really move until he got a text of some type of call from her. Well, you're on a three-way, I'd expect. While you're on the three-way? Oh, never mind. Oh, that means I got to figure out where I was standing. And any of those phone contacts you're having with them, are they all from your actual phone? I think so. Then we get on. These are all different clips. It was my understanding, or different subjects, that when I flew down, Mr. Fabio was never supposed to be killed in his home. But I believe that when, I just couldn't do it. I believe that Monica wanted it done, so I think that's why she told Baker he would be at home alone. I believe. Is there ever, I know, I heard it, I listened? Gee, if I was Mr. Austin and Mr. Baker was saying, Monica wants him dead, I would have said, if you want me to help kill this guy, because I think you want him dead, but I'm not going to help you unless she wants him dead. All he had to do was give him the phone and say, here, Monica, tell him. Hi, I want him dead. Didn't happen. Couldn't happen. She didn't want him dead. So all of this knowledge, as couched as it is, and I believe, I understand, I assume that Baker talked to Monica and that Monica told him she wanted him dead and that Monica wanted it done. That's why she told Baker that he would be at home alone. And how does he know that? Because he says that's what Baker told me. Well, it's missing something. I have no doubt at some point Baker told him Monica said he was home that day, but not to kill him. He wanted to know where Fabio was every day, and he did. He stalked. He even ended up at the same restaurant as the girls were. Suddenly they get a flat tire, and who's driving behind him to fix it up? Robert Baker. What a sicko. Who knows what would happen with the girls if this had carried on. They were 16 and 18. My God, they were senior citizens for Baker compared to the 14-year-old. I don't think age was ever an issue for him. But let's let this guy stay on the streets for 4 months while we decide if we can actually get evidence against Monica, because she's the one we want. Let's go on. We'll turn that off for a sec, if we can. I'll go back to the last one. So, you'll see a jury instruction, and we'll get to that, where it talks about you cannot find that someone's an accomplice to a murder or any crime unless there's some independent evidence corroborating what the accomplice is supposed to be saying. So if the accomplice says to you that well, there it is, to corroborate the testimony of an accomplice in this case is Mr. Austin. Baker's the murderer, Austin's the accomplice. That means he aided him, knowing what he was going to do. There must be evidence of some act or fact related to the crime which, if believed by you, by itself and without any aid, interpretation, or direction from the testimony of the accomplice, Mr. Austin, tends to connect the defendant with the commission of the crime charged. However, it's not necessary that the corroboration be sufficient in itself to establish every element or to corroborate every fact. All right, I was going to say let me put it into English for you, but there's the English. You're bright people. You can understand what's going to happen, what it's going to say. In determining whether an accomplice has been corroborated, you must assume the testimony of the accomplice has been removed from the case. You must determine whether there is any remaining evidence which tends to connect the defendant with the commission of the crime. If there's no independent evidence which tends to connect the defendant with the commission of the crime, the testimony of the accomplice is not corroborated. If there's independent evidence which you believe, then the testimony of the accomplice is corroborated. Okay, let's discuss that.
What do you do? Let's take our morning recess. Take our morning recess for 15 minutes. The evidence supplies. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes.